But you're not sleeping. Bad dreams?
The dreams are lovely. It's the waking up that I'm beginning to resent.
If you'd be so kind, would you mind introducing yourself for the podcast?
Okay, so I'm James Young, and the stage name I've used in the past is Vortigern. So I'm the guy who writes all the music in the band, and I also founded the band.
And what is the name of the band?
Lichgate.
And so I'm going to admit that the reason why I had you say that is because I had no idea how to pronounce it.
Ah, yeah.
Spent a few minutes on Google trying to figure it out. And I got Lightgate, I got Lickgate, but so it's Lichgate?
Yeah, Lichgate, that's right.
Cool. And how would you describe the music of Lichgate?
Well, it's hard to summarize in music. I guess it's some kind of progressive black metal with atmospheric parts, and we're heavily keyboard based in the same way that Emperor were in some ways. And that's how I would explain it. You know, some kind of modern avant-garde black metal with inspiration from classical music in some ways.
Now, you mentioned the term progressive. Would you also describe your band as being technical?
In some ways, the new release is technical. But I wouldn't have said that for the past releases. We've always had some parts which were completely simple, and then other parts which were challenging and hard to play. So even the second album had some kind of technical or semi-technical parts on it, like the ninth track, Acousmatic Guardian, that had the chorus that had quick notes in it. Technical is a strange one for me because when I think of technical, I think of bands like Fallujah and that kind of like Necrophagus, all those kind of death metal bands which are pushing boundaries. But we never did technical for the sake of being technical. We just have some parts which are quicker and harder to play just because that's what the part happens to be at the time. But for example, with our latest EP, the second track is clearly moving into technical territory. And the same could be said for the final track on the EP. And that's just because we've developed as musicians and we want to express ourselves a bit more. So some parts end up being a bit more challenging to play. And, maybe in the future we'll do a bit more of that.
So I definitely want to talk to you about this new EP that you have coming out. But first, let's talk about the history of the band a little bit. When did you guys form?
So it was around 2012. And when I founded the band, I wanted to find some interesting people to work with. So I invited Greg Chandler from Esoteric. That's his main band. And after talks with a few different drummers, I went with Tom Valady for the drums. I mean, believe it or not, I asked the Absu guy, Prescriptor. he heard the first demos, and I invited him to play on the first album. And there were a few other people who I was in discussion with at the time, but in the end, I went with Tom Valady, mainly because he was also in the UK and keen and someone who really cared about what I was doing, so it made sense.
Yeah, I think Prescriptor lives in like the Jurassic era or something like that, right?
So somewhere in Texas.
Texas, where they still have Tyrannosauruses.
Yeah.
How clear of an idea did you have of the music you wanted to make when you first formed the band?
Pretty clear. I mean, when we formed the band, the idea was to kind of develop where we'd left off with some earlier demos. So the first album was a bit more traditional black metal, and then as soon as we'd got that out of the way, I think we had a good idea of what the style was going to be. So the thing is, even now I have a long-term plan, but you have to do it one step at a time. So there are lots of crazy things I'd like to do. You can't really go overboard, so you'll have to just wait. But I've got a long-term plan.
Speaking of long-term plans, you've got a new EP coming out on March 13th called, okay, so I'm going to butcher this. So right after I say it, you're going to have to give me the proper way to pronounce this. But I'm going to go with Also Sprach Futura. Is that close?
No, I'm afraid not. It's German, as you probably figured out.
Yeah.
So I'm probably not the best guy to ask, but it's something like Also Sprach Futura. Also Sprach.
Okay.
Something like that.
Okay.
Yeah. But Also Sprach. Yeah. If you look it up in the German pronunciation, they'll say it like that. And then the Futura is obviously Latin, so that's not German.
So this mix of German and Latin means what? What does it signify?
Well, basically, the first word means thus,
Okay.
so therefore, and then the second word means spoke, and the final word Futura is Maschinenmensch in the film Metropolis, and so it's got nothing to do with future. It's just the name of a character in the film, and we wanted to use the German way of saying it. It's kind of tribute to Nietzsche, and kind of play on words. And we didn't want it to be thus spake, because Emperor did that in one of their well-known songs.
Right.
Thus spake the night spirit.
Right.
That's one of their songs that a lot of people know. So we didn't want people saying, "Oh, it sounds like an Emperor song." And so yeah, the meaning is just like, in a way, therefore spoke the machine. Yeah, thing like that. The whole EP is themed on simulacra and artificial humans, that kind of thing.
Would you describe it as a concept album?
Yeah, and all of the 4 releases that we've done, they all are. Just the first album wasn't, but this one is a concept album. Yeah.
Tell me about the writing and recording of this album. You mentioned at one point that this is more technical than your previous releases, or at least some songs are.
Yeah. So what I had was a bunch of skeleton tracks, like I don't know, like say 3/4 complete each, and then I met up with the guitarist, and we sat down together, and we basically finished writing it over a 2-week period. And so it was quite quick, but we were doing full days, hard work, and even after that, I was doing little tweaks and things like that. So, yeah, it was done relatively quickly, but I did, it wasn't like the main tracks have came up. I didn't come up with them on the spot. I, as is now, I don't write that much. I do a track every few months or something. I used to write more. Like, for example, with the second album, I was writing a lot of music all the time. Like every week I was writing. I was kind of obsessive. And then so recently it's just become less and less, because I find it is exhausting to write music, and also just other things in life taking over, It's hard to find enough time to do it. So I like now to come up with ideas when I'm inspired, and then find basically a chunk of time, like a 2-week period, and say, right, let's do it, and just do it every day, long days, and really get into it. And so yeah, so that was the case with the EP, and then the recording took, I hate to say it took about 3 weeks. It was quite long. That includes the mixing and mastering, right?
Yeah.
The recording itself, I guess it took the drummer about 3 or 4 days. All adds up.
Sorry, just to clarify. So when you say you don't write as much as you used to, you're still the main songwriter for Lichgate, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
So I basically write all of it. Yeah.
I just wanted to clarify. So when you say you're not writing as much music, you just mean you're not writing as much music in total, but you're still writing all the music for Lichgate.
Yeah, that's right. So in total, it's just backing off a bit,
Okay.
because actually it can be problematic to have too much material written, because then you got the task of having to choose what to develop, and like, for example, with the Contagion album, there was a huge amount of music written for that, and in the end, we're looking back, I think a lot of very good stuff got ditched, it shouldn't have done, because we just chose 6 tracks, and there was too much to choose from. Looking back, I think it was too much to take in, and maybe I overlooked some of the songs that could have been chosen. But in the end, you just go with gut feeling, and that's that. So next time, I'm with the next album, I'm trying to be quite strict. Like, I don't want to just continuously write lots of stuff. I want to just back off a bit. Be really strict about what I choose to write down and develop.
So by releasing an EP, did it give you a chance to focus more on the songwriting since you had fewer songs to work with?
Yeah, it's the kind of minimalistic approach, because I think bands maybe these days they don't need to do a whole album, because if you look at statistics anyway with what people listen to, you can see that like if you, let's say Spotify, you'll get albums and you'll see that most of the listeners don't listen properly all the way through. You kind of lose their attention span. So I think an EP is good because people's attention stays and they actually listen to all of it. But I think an EP is quite a good idea. But in our case, we could just focus on less things, and it helps us kind of develop the direction a bit. So it was a worthwhile idea, and also just keep the name active rather than disappearing for another 3 years.
So this EP was recorded at your vocalist Greg's studio. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. So he's got a studio called Priory Studios, and that's his main job, and all sorts of bands go there. It's a good studio.
Do you usually record with him?
We recorded a second album with him. Yeah, we did the first two, and then the third album we went with Orgon Studios. So Jaime Gomez, who is quite a big producer and engineer these days. He did the first, if I'm not mistaken, he did the first Ghost album, and then he's gone on to do recent albums from Paradise Lost and Soul Sophia and Ulva, etc.
This EP will be your first release for. Okay, and I'm going to butcher this pronunciation again, so maybe you should pronounce it before I get it wrong. You want me to give it a shot?
Oh yeah, yeah. Go on, just go for it. Yeah.
I'm going to say Debamore Morty. How close is that?
Well, I'm not a French speaker myself, but I'd imagine it's that's about right. Debamore Morty, yeah, something like that. Yeah.
So this is your first release for them. How did they get involved with Lichgate?
He knew the band already, and he liked our past releases, but Blood Music is kind of winding down their operations, and they're not signing any new bands, and they're just kind of they're just shrinking down and winding down, and the label guy is going on to other things like filming and computer games, stuff like that, and so yeah, we approached a whole bunch of labels, and we just the ones we liked, we like Debamore Morty. We think the bands they've got are interesting and relevant to us. So we just approached him, and he replied, and he said, "Yeah, he'll do it."
Is that something that you look for in a label? If the roster is filled with bands that you relate to musically or that you personally look up to?
I think it's important. Sometimes I see labels and I see the roster that they have, and I don't understand it. It makes no sense, because either the bands don't mix together, or some of the signings are just they're not valid bands. They don't really sell anything. They don't offer anything to the music industry. Like, they're literally just doing something generic, and no one really cares about them, but yet they're still amongst these rosters with more important bands, and it's just I never get it. It's just weird how the record labels work.
I mean, I think the honest truth is, ever since the dawn of the streaming era, nobody really knows what they're doing anymore. So it's it's kind of everyone's throwing stuff at the wall to see what sticks. I would like to talk about Blood Music a little bit, because we talked about this a little bit off the mic, but off the mic meaning before we started the podcast. But I discovered Lichgate because you guys were on the Blood Music roster, and I've mentioned a few times, and I've interviewed a few bands that Blood Music has released. That label fascinates me because I genuinely have no idea what their next release is going to be, or what it was before they started winding down. They would release progressive or avant-garde black metal and death metal, and then they would have kind of electronic music, and then they would have ambient artists like Toby Driver. And so one of the reasons why I paid attention to Lichgate is because when you're on a label like Blood Music, it's clear that the label picks bands that are doing something different or doing something special. Just in terms of the Blood Music roster, how do you feel that you fit in or related to the other bands on that label?
Well, as you rightly pointed out, it's a diverse choice of releases, and he even released the Emperor box set, and Emperor are probably the most similar band to us that's out there. I mean, so that's a good enough reason. I mean, who else? I'm trying to think what he released that's relevant. I think it was for me, the most important thing is that bands are doing something that's new, fresh, and inspired. So I don't think it really matters if the genres are really different. Like, for example, he released Perturbator, and that was kind of retro revival of game music and early 90s kind of electronic, right? Or late 80s, that kind of thing. And, you know, because it's kind of dark the way it was done, it appealed to metal fans. And it hadn't been done before. So, yeah, I think it's about mentality. Like a lot of the people on the label would probably agree with each other about what a good release is and what good music is. So that's how we fit. But I don't think, apart from Emperor, I don't think there was really anyone like us. You know, I think we're odd ones out anyway.
I wasn't trying to say that any of the other bands sounded like Lichgate. It's just there's something of a progressive or maybe left of center mindset with a lot of the bands where you could tell that they were, you know, not interested in being another old school death metal or old school thrash metal or, you know, whatever's trendy or popular. Yeah.
Exactly.
So, before I let you go, tell me what you have planned for the future.
So we're probably going to do a European tour at the end of the year, but it's in discussion at the moment, so it hasn't been confirmed. And then we'll look at spreading out. So we'll look at visiting the US. And after that, probably in about a year or a year and a half, we'll look at doing a new album. So I think in about 5 or 6 months, I'll start seriously working on it. And it should take, I know, I'd imagine it shouldn't take more than a year to finish it. So that's the main thing, really.
Now, you mentioned you have long-term plans. Do you have an idea of what the next album will sound like? Or what direction you want to go in?
Yeah, so For example, I like OK Computer from Radiohead. I don't know if you're familiar with that album, but I like all the different tones that you get on that. It's got some amazing guitar sounds and effects, and it's coherent, but also very progressive, and it managed to appeal to a lot of people. Just despite being pretty out there, and I think Radiohead have been inspirational to all sorts of people, so metal bands or electronic artists, whatever. So I think that's how I would explain where we're going. So we want to take some kind of inspiration from that and apply it to what we do. So we'll be definitely exploring more dynamics and different tones, different moods within the album. And yeah, we don't want to just do one dynamic, because I think a lot of metal bands, they just do one dynamic through their album, because it's you put on one track and it's got this high gain guitar sound with everything being really loud. You'll skip to another track and it will sound practically the same. It's pretty boring, if you ask me. So what we want to do is have an album where each track is a kind of mood in itself. So yeah, we'll be doing more clean sections. Yeah, continuing where we left off with the EP. So doing more of the stuff like track 2 and track 4. Hard to explain it in words, really. But I'd imagine also we'll use probably less organ. We'll probably use more of the vintage keyboards, like let's say the Mellotron, stuff like that. Just explore different keyboard sounds, I think.
So you mentioned having the different songs explore different moods. How important is that kind of variety to you? Having your music explore just different directions in that way.
How important? Well, the thing is, human being has all sorts of emotions, right, from day to day. So let me put it this way: if I hear an album and it sounds dark and apocalyptic all the way through, not only is it lacking in contrast, but it's also not very representative about how people think, right? So I think I mentioned the Radiohead thing before. I think that's got a good spectrum of moods, although most of the moods are negative, aren't they? And solemn, but there's still some kind of light, dark and light in it, and it's not all dark all the way through. And I just think that it's important to capture a range of moods that represent a long time period, because an album is a collection of things from a long time period. Normally, people don't write an album in like 1 month, do they? The tracks are normally from different periods.
So the new Lichgate EP with the title that I can't pronounce will be coming out March 13th through a French label whose name I also can't pronounce. How can people order this EP?
Well, the normal places. So certainly Bandcamp is a place to go, and the label's website. They've got, if I'm not mistaken, they've got 2 web stores, one in US and one in Europe. So those are the main places to go, really.
And if people want to follow Lichgate, how can they do that?
So, we can find us on Facebook and Instagram, Spotify, and we've got the main website, lichgate.net. So that's kind of an archive as well. So we try to keep all the information on there, going back in time.
Is there anything else you want people to know?
That's about it for now.
Thank you so much, James.
Yeah, thanks very much for the interview.